me on the stream, but that's okay. I'm back on my main setup now, so we are good to go this week. And we will be talking about today's episode is all about the Penguins of Europa. There was a weekly collectible when Beyond Light first launched that each week you could go collect another penguin, and as a tribute to that, we actually have a special guest tonight, who is I'd consider her to be a penguin aficionado, considering her name is Mystic Penguin 15, and that is my wife, Mystic Penguin 15. So, Sweets, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Oh, see, did I get all weird about talking on the microphone, though? I don't know what to say. I'm married to this lovely man sitting next to me who likes to tell stories. I don't know what else. I don't know what else.
It's fun to watch her struggle sometimes.
Yeah, he likes to make me feel nervous.
Yeah, you don't have to really worry. No one listens to this anyhow.
Yeah. It's just the 10 of us anyway. No. And so my co-host Myth here, he and I have been researching some of this, and Myth, this goes deeper than we expected.
It does. So what on the surface appears to be a much smaller, more personal story of in this case, 10-year-old child. I saw it as Micah. Is how I saw the name.
Micah,
or how I pronounced it to
Abram
myself.
or Abraham?
I think it's Abram. Micah Abram.
Abram. Yep.
But so all the story that you get as you discover these penguin collectibles every week is told through the medium of letters that are being written by young Micah. And these letters are all addressed to the traveler. I equate them very similarly to a kid writing letters to Santa. Is kind of the feel of
absolutely.
it, you know. Using it a little bit as an outlet, a little bit as a this great mythical figure, although they can see the traveler at this point.
Sure.
This is all during the Golden Age. But that kind of vibe.
Very, very much this. I thought of it as like a comfort blanket type thing,
it's almost like a journal or a diary, something
Sure.
that he was able to express what he was feeling and thinking at the time, and help him work through some difficult scenarios. But yeah, so what on the surface appeared to be no more than that. A small personal story about a boy on Europa, or a child on Europa, excuse me. They never specify one way or the other.
Yeah.
Turns into a little more as you dig a little deeper into things, both inside and outside of the lore book about the penguins. So, without further ado, we'll start with letter number 1. So,
well, real quick. So the penguins themselves, when you go pick them up on Europa, they're these little. They're very much like an orange. They look almost like a wooden toy. But to kind of step out of the game for a second, they were also able to be purchased on the Budgie store as a physical item. And when you opened it up, there was an actual penguin inside with a little headset and everything. So I took them to be as autonomous, we had trained penguins how to do tasks. And as you will learn, that is not the case.
That is not the case.
That is not the case at all.
Although that would be pretty awesome too.
I'm okay with that.
But yeah, so in the first letter, Micah writes to the traveler, and I'm not going to read things verbatim,
Sure.
But I'll give the general points, and we can discuss on certain things that stick out. So writing a letter to the traveler, similar to kids writing a letter to Santa, we learn that Micah was born and raised on Mars, but is now leaving for Europa, specifically the Eventide colony on Europa. We learn that the traveler is in Io at this time, is currently terraforming Io.
So this is
which
pre-collapse. Yeah, pre-collapse during Golden Age.
Yeah, and specifically, it's we're not exactly sure on time frame, but we know that the Traveler was terraforming Io at the time the darkness actually attacked. So presumably, this is fairly close to where the collapse it started.
Sure.
So
Because to kind of step out of Micah's story for a bit, do we have any type of time frame on how long the facilities on Europa were up and running before they collapsed?
I think we do. Let me find it though.
Because that was something. While you're looking, I'm going to kind of go off a little bit here. So that because that was something that was very interesting to me. I always when I was started reading this, I looked at it as like Micah was like one of the first families showing up there. But the more you read into it, it's definitely not that. Like the Eventide is an established, like the whole facility is already built. It's all underground. It's a sprawling, essentially community of researchers and stuff like that that work at the facility on Europa, which is of course run by Clovis himself in his attempt to achieve godhood for humanity with his EXO program, and when we learned that the Traveler is on Io, terraforming Io, that's when I was like, oh, okay, well this is Europa's been there for a hot second, and the facilities are all built up, everything like that. Now I know, of course, Myth is he's still looking for it.
Yeah, I'm not finding it with a quick search, so I'll have to move beyond that. But we do get a little hint as to where this falls amongst other things that happen, which we can build a reference for ourselves, kind of in that regard, as we get into some of the later letters. But yeah, so Traveler's on Io at this time. Micah and his family live on Mars. They're leaving for Europa, and we learn that Micah is his family consists of two fathers, which he refers to one as Papa and one as Dad. So those are two very similar, similar descriptors, but they are his family.
And that was something I again, this is I don't want to say reading more into it than I should, but I really enjoyed that about this story, like, because it is, as Bungie as the writers, and we saw this with the Awoken too, like they recognize non-binary, they recognize, like Bungie's writers are not writing these stories as a strictly, male-female relationship of everything, and it's like I'm absolutely falling more in love every time I read one of these stories again. And I'm like, this is awesome. This is awesome to see a developer to not stick strictly to a single idea, and to really try to incorporate everyone and have these stories of these great people of Osiris and Saint, who we know that they are lovers, and like we talked before, Mara and Shiraido, who are lovers. Like, to have stories like that, I think is freaking awesome, and I love that. I absolutely love that.
Yeah, and they're writing from the perspective of the time periods that the characters live in, which I think is a big part of it. Not to say that these kinds of relationships can't and don't exist today, but thinking years in the future, a utopian type vision of the world, the interpretation being made here is that, like, those kinds of differences won't matter anymore. And so it's just part of everyday life, regardless of the makeup of the families.
Absolutely love it.
But so Micah has again Papa and Dad. He refers to Papa as a quantum engineer for Braytech. Explains it as he basically builds super cool computers.
That's just a cool thing. Like,
Yeah.
that's just freaking cool.
And say he is very skillful at his job as a quantum engineer, to the point where he consults directly with Clovis Bray on a number of secret projects, and built some of Rasputin's hardware.
Yep.
So this is a engineer that is very highly regarded within Braytech, or at least I can only assume is very highly regarded within Braytech.
Well, and all of Braytech, because like Anna's whole thing was the war mines, and so I'd be curious to find out if he worked with Willow on Siva.
Yeah, I specifically looked. I didn't have enough time to really branch out, but I did look through all of the experiment logs from Beyond Light, where it was like Clovis, CB, and then another
where he's
another
talking
dot.
to another,
I did look through those and hoping that I'd see like something A to be like something Abrams.
Sure.
Unfortunately, I didn't find any in
Oh,
those.
bummer.
I know, I was really hoping, but I would not be surprised if we find reference of an Abrams in other lore cards, and we just didn't have the time to find them.
Absolutely.
But regardless, very well regarded engineer within Braytech. We know for a fact worked on Rasputin as well as other projects, and he's very open with Micah. He's very open. Tells him that, or tells Micah that he likes to bring his work home and show what he's doing, and essentially under the stipulation that you can't tell anyone that I'm showing you this top secret stuff. But
like I equate that someone to like today, like their dad works at the Pentagon and they're just like, hey, we just developed this super top secret weapon, but don't tell anyone.
Right, don't tell
we'll
anyone.
Have to kill you. Like, that's what I equate to that to.
But it's kind of cool at the same time because he approaches it as giving his child a learning opportunity that he could not get elsewhere. Like and to his credit, throughout reading these, Micah is, for a 10-year-old especially, and I know it's all fictional writing, but is presented as a very intelligent young child.
Oh yeah.
Has a very good understanding of the core principles of even things like chemistry and thermonuclear principles, and I don't know if that's just them saying the Golden Age's way of educating people was so good that even young children, this was common knowledge, or if it was because
that's what I read it as.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably where they were going with it, and then in addition to that, he's got his papa in this case keeps bringing in top secret stuff that he just gets to learn more about. So his other father, who he refers to as Dad, is also a worker at Braytech, specifically a psychologist, which kind of perplexes Micah a little bit.
Sure.
He's not really sure what his dad does over there. He kind of wonders, or say Micah kind of wonders to themselves, again, they never dictate one way or the other, that maybe they need Dad to train a war mind like Dr. Anna Bray did, only instead of language, he'll teach it how to analyze dreams.
Yep.
Which I thought was an interesting little note, and I want to look more into that at some point, because I feel like a war mind having dreams sounds somewhat familiar to me. And maybe I'm just thinking of the Exos and their dream sequences that they go to.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought they were directly referring to. Like when they started talking about analyzing dreams, I was like, well, this is the entire Exo thing. Like all Exos have the dream, and this is his dad is hired specifically to analyze these and figure this out. Like, how do we work through this issue?
Yeah. So I just thought it was a neat little tidbit of, hey, this is probably something to pay attention to.
Absolutely.
And I thought it was interesting. Micah kind of ruminates or questions on the Traveler. Asking, do you have a hard drive or a brain? Are you an AI like Rasputin? Have you ever talked to Rasputin before? It's similar questions to what we ourselves have asked through the Destiny lore. But it tells me that even during the height of the Golden Age, they still didn't really know what the Traveler was or how it worked or anything.
It's just this big cool ball in the sky that's terraforming moons and planets.
Yeah, so that was just kind of interesting that like even then they didn't know any more than we did, really.
Yeah,
about how the Traveler worked.
Absolutely.
And then we just get a little bit of confirmation at the end of the first letter that he is hiding, or Micah is hiding these from his parents by saying, I have to encrypt this real quick and go. And that's kind of where the first letter ends. So, they're still on Mars at this point, preparing to leave for Europa for work, for Micah's father's work, both of them. And so they come to arrive on Europa. And there were some interesting things about the European climate that they talk about here. Yes. Specifically, that walking around outside, and they were given these immediately after stepping off the colony ship. You have to wear a Braytech snowsuit.
Yep.
Because the snowsuit, it says, protects against the bad ions bouncing down from space, and also the cold, and remarks that it can get to 140 Kelvin at night, which is ridiculous.
So I actually did some research on this myself. 140 Kelvin is negative 200 degrees Celsius, roughly. Negative 200 degrees Fahrenheit. I think it's negative 2. See, now you got me questioning it. Now I'm gonna have to look it up again. The whole ion thing is like, that's mainly because Europa is a moon and it doesn't have an atmosphere, so there's no ozone layer. There's no type of protection like that from the ions of space, and that's actually why there is red ice on Europa. Like, we can see that today when we go visit it, and the pictures that we as humans, present day humans, have taken of Europa, it actually looks like that. The redness of that is caused by the ionization of whatever's happening at the surface level.
That's very cool. I knew it was red, but I had no idea that was the reasoning. That's very interesting. Another
147 degrees Kelvin is negative 126 Celsius, which is negative 200 Fahrenheit.
So yeah, it's kind of cold.
It's pretty cold. It's pretty cold.
I'd say for a little bit of additional reference, 0 Kelvin is the theoretical point at which molecules stop moving.
Absolute zero.
Yeah. It's very impressive.
You can't do that. Like, a molecule cannot stop moving by nature of a molecule. Like, it literally cannot stop moving. And so if you were to actually reach zero, like, to me, that'd be like, that'd be like taking time away. Stasis says what?
But I just thought, again, it was impressive to see a 10-year-old use Kelvin as their unit of measurement. And maybe that's just the way it is. Maybe they've completely moved to universal measurement systems in this golden age, which would make sense too.
As far as like making scientific advancements, that would be you would think that they would have some sort of standard there, which would be the Kelvin system. And like you're saying, with Micah being 10 years old, I think that is part of that. It's a two-part thing to me. The fact that Micah doesn't understand doesn't truly understand the psychology stuff, so he's like, that's kind of weird to me. Like, he's definitely attuned. Because, you know, everyone has their own little thing that they're really good at, and so I think that's where Micah is really attuned to electronics and practical science is what I would call it.
I
Physics,
think that's
stuff like that. So
yeah, I think that's accurate. Yeah, so they arrive on Europa, and Micah wonders, what I'm sure everyone at that facility wonders, why did Clovis Bray choose Europa, this awful, snowy, cold place, to build the Eventide colony when the Traveler is just around the corner at Io, terraforming it, making it much, much nicer. And I do wonder if Clovis either intentionally or subconsciously moved his work away from the Traveler because he was using darkness at the time.
Or did being so that's the other thing too. Since both of those are moons of Jupiter, did being that close to the Traveler affect his, like, was there light emanating from the Traveler that was able to affect his work as well?
Yep, that's a possibility too. I'm sure he had a reason. Maybe it was just purely out of secrecy. You know, who knows? But it was a very conscious choice, I think, to build it out in this desolate place.
Yeah.
And at this point, we discover, you know, as Micah and Papa are the ones that are on the colony ship, and they meet up with his dad, who has apparently already been there for some time, or at least long enough to grow a beard. Yep. And Micah is gifted a penguin plushie, which he tries to be like, I'm too old for this, but then keeps it anyway.
Yeah. And that to me turns into the physical security blanket. Like, his letters to the Traveler is like this like metaphysical, like,
it's his emotional support.
Exactly. And then that penguin, that's something that he can physically hold and be like, this is mine. That's if anything goes wrong, I have this penguin.
Yeah, and I thought there was a interesting little bit here where so his dad refers to his beard as being like a polar bear.
like kissing a polar bear.
Like kissing a polar bear.
That. I love that one.
And that causes Micah to question to the Traveler in his letter, like, do you know what polar bears and penguins are?
Yeah.
And he says, back before you came, they lived on Earth's two poles that were a lot like Europa. So that makes me wonder, in Destiny's timeline, did penguins and polar bears go extinct prior to the Traveler's arrival? Because it kind of seems that's what's implied.
Oh, now we've got input from the expert. Hang on. Yep, the lifespan of humans being tripled. Yep. So that's the other thing too that Mystic Penguin brought up. I believe in that specific one that Mike is talking to him, they talk about how the lifespan of humans have tripled, and that something about being free of like death fear or something like that. And so that's where I'm curious if we've just outlived penguins and polar bears. You know, like if
well, I mean, as a species, though, like,
I know that's a long time. That's
and
a
polar
really
bears have lived
long time.
And he specifically mentions that the lifespan is roughly 300 years now for people. And like penguins and polar bears, I'm pretty sure have been on Earth more than 300 years.
I think so too.
So, I mean, unless we just so happen to perfectly line up with the end of their species.
Yes.
Regardless, it was just a little note that I thought was interesting.
Yep.
Perhaps Bungie putting a little touch on climate change there.
Yeah. I definitely read it as that too.
Yeah. But Micah decides to name their newly acquired penguin plush Mihalova after the scientist aeronaut on the Ares 1 mission, which was the mission to make contact with the Traveler on Mars. And also references the other two aeronaut names, Hardy and Quinn. So those were the three that we see in the very first Destiny cutscene ever. Those were the three aeronauts,
that make first contact
that were making first contact.
That's awesome.
And he, so this was another little bit.
That to me speaks to those three aeronauts as well. That they are like they're the equivalency of what we like our Neil Armstrong. You know, like
oh yes, very much so.
They are revered throughout what in Micah's time is now human history. as the three that met the Traveler. Like they are very important people in their time.
They are household names. Yeah,
absolutely.
So and Micah also says that was a long time ago when that mission happened. But human years must feel like minutes to you, and to the Traveler. He references that he's not sure how to send his messages to the Traveler, and wonders if he can use a warsat, even though they're meant for high-level threats. And says,
I wanted to see this 10-year-old kid just go and be like,
just launch a warsat at the Traveler.
Can I borrow a warsat? I just want to talk. I just want to talk.
I just need to send a message. It'll be real quick.
I just want to talk. That's the Family Guy one where Peter's he's got a shotgun and he's popped it open and he's loading his shotgun. He's like, I just want to talk. I just want to talk. Like that's what that was. I was like, what the hell is kid? But to him, it's just like the warsat's just another tool.
Yeah, well, and it's an unused tool at this time because he says. They're only meant for high-level threats, but how many of those can there be? This is a golden age. Like, we don't have to fight things. Yeah. Which lends in a little bit to what we were talking about with Exodus Green and them being really the only Exodus ship to be kitted out to that degree with weapons, because everything else was staying within the solar system. Everything else was, quote-unquote non-hostile.
And being protected by Rasputin and the Warsat network.
So it's just a very different mindset. There's not a belief that there can be a threat, essentially.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and then we get into letter 3. So that's the end of letter 2. We get into letter 3. At this point, the family's been on Europa for a week. And because of the snow and the temperature and the bad ions, pretty much everyone is on Europa is crowded into this underground building, kind of catacomb type area is the feel that I got from it.
Yeah.
And the only people that go outside are maintenance workers and exos. And Micah's view on exos was kind of interesting in this letter in particular. So the way that or the way that Micah talks about it, this appears to be close to when exos were first invented, quote unquote, or perfected is probably the better word.
Sure.
Because in the letter it says, they did it. Clovis Bray and Papa made walking, talking, human-shaped AIs. And that, I think, is a very important distinction. Because that tells me that either through Micah's, either through his own belief, his own determining of what exos are, or through very specific messaging from Clovis or from Braytech, Micah at this point believes exos are AIs. Which I think is a different assumption than their human consciousness transported into a metal body.
Absolutely.
He's viewing them through the same vein as like a Rasputin.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And to him, they're still such a new thing and so secretive that I mean, that's really all the information he has to go off of. Like, the only other thing in the universe to him right now that has ever done anything like that is Rasputin, the AI.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything about these walking, talking AIs is, in his eyes, like you're saying, that's all there is. There is no, there's no not understanding, but there's the thought of putting a human consciousness into a metal frame isn't like, that's not a thing.
Right.
Right.
That's not even something on their radar. Like,
yeah.
the only people that know that that's what's trying to happen are the people in Braytech at this time.
The highest level of Braytech.
The highest level. Which I'm led to believe that Dad in this is in that highest level.
Absolutely.
And probably both parents, honestly, probably both Dad and Papa. Because Papa tells Micah that's why Dad is here, to talk to the Exos and analyze their humanness. Which Micah doesn't quite understand, because to him it's like, how can an AI have humanness, and why does it matter?
Yep.
So Exos are apparently around enough that people have seen them enough to have formed a fear about them, or an uneasiness about them, with the exception of Micah. Essentially, he states at least that he's not scared of them, although others are, and that he's been told by his papa that he and Micah are very similar in that they forget to fear what they do not know.
Yeah.
They want to investigate before, they maybe get ahead of themselves and their curiosity gets the better of them.
Yep.
Before other things like fear and whatnot. As they're getting kind of a tour of this place from Dad in this case, they see an Exo, and Micah wants to go talk to it because shiny, new thing.
Absolutely.
He's very curious. He wants to figure out, like, how does it work? What's it gonna, how's it gonna respond to my questions? All these things.
Yeah.
And his dad essentially tells him, like, you really shouldn't. I know how much of a chatterbox you are, and let's just not. He essentially says, but I need to go, talk with this Exo, so give me just a second. And so Dad goes over and talks to the Exo, at which point Papa, who's still with Micah, kind of does the parent thing. It's like, oh, you're not really that bad. Don't believe everything your father tells you about it.
Yeah.
That kind of feeling. And it's mentioned that when Dad comes back from talking to this Exo, that he has a worried look on his face. We don't exactly know what transpired in his talk, but it's something that has noticeably worried him. And when he's asked about it, he essentially just says, can't talk about it, doctor-patient confidentiality.
Yeah.
Which, again, makes Micah question. He goes, how can that be a thing when there isn't really a patient?
Yeah.
Which, just kind of further implies that the Exos are human consciousnesses at this point. They're just being played off as AIs.
Absolutely.
Or that's the best understanding that Micah has at the time.
Yeah.
So.
Still very much a secretive program that is.
Yes.
And like, even I think even as Guardians today, like, I mean, it wasn't even until Beyond Light that we truly started to understand what the Exos are. And so, like, for this kid to be at the beginning of it and to see what's going on, like, and he's like, that's weird. That shouldn't, that I don't understand what that means. And,
yeah.
And that was a nice little touch there.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see how exos were first, like what people's first impressions of them were.
Yeah.
And this also tells me that if we look at our timeline, so if the Traveler's on Io, terraforming Io, we know that that's where it was when the darkness attacked.
Mm-hmm.
Exos did not come into the playing field until near the beginning of the collapse / the end of the Golden Age.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting. So they were, kind of right at the cusp of this change of ages.
Yep.
But yeah, so now we continue into letter 4. At this point, the family's been there for a month on Europa. And Micah goes to a school, quote unquote, which is explained as really just 50 kids crammed in a room.
I think of it as like a rural community, where it's, like there's not enough kids to form like an elementary school, a middle school, and a high school. They just kind of took all the kids and crammed them into one room, and it was like, well, learn stuff.
Yep. We'll find someone that can play slides up on the projector, and you'll take notes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so he goes to this school where but there's a number of other kids there, and Micah discovers that all of the kids got a penguin, not just Micah.
That just super bums him out, right?
I know. He's like, oh, I thought I was special, but
I thought I was special. I mean, he's still special, but at the same time, like your penguin is not as unique as you expected it to be, or as you have believed it to be this whole time.
But he finds that some of the kids have thrown their penguins away, which he's not okay with, or Micah's not okay with. And so Micah rescues one from the trash chute, and decides to name it Calumet. I think it was Calumet. I think that's the pronunciation.
Marty said yes. Sorry, Mr.
Okay.
Calumet said yes.
After an aeronaut that had died on the mission to Mars prior to making it there to meet the Traveler. So there are actually 4 aeronauts that left on that mission, or at least 4, but only 3 survived long enough to actually make contact with the Traveler.
Which is interesting, because like even as our today's standards, it takes a hot second to get to Mars from Earth. So like I'm curious if that was a there was some sort of complication, or if they just genuinely they died on their way there. Just that blows,
Yeah, I mean, at the time that canonically, the time that humanity meets the Traveler in Destiny's timeline, or in the Destiny universe, is the same year as Destiny launched in real life. I can only assume that implies the same technological advancements have been made in the in-game universe, so it would be just as long of a trip to Mars for them at that point as it would be for us right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it is probably just they were in a rocket ship for years, and unfortunately they didn't all make it.
Yeah.
And this is where Micah confirms the lifespan, because Micah says that's their biggest fear, is to die before the next great discovery could be made, and says that Micah doesn't want a stupid accident to steal their remaining 290 years.
Yeah.
Which confirms the 300-year lifespan. And
that's still like an average, right? Like they don't just, it's not like on their 301st birthday they just keel over dead.
No. I have to assume that's average lifespan. So I'm sure there's a little higher and a little lower than that.
That did make me laugh though when he was like exactly 290.
Exactly 290.
And I keep making this mistake too this whole time. I keep saying he. We really don't know if this is the he or she. Like Micah is never referred to one way or another. So I do apologize for that.
I know, I'm trying to catch myself as well, but it's just the force of habit.
It is.
So take no offense. But this also causes Micah to wonder, how long are the Exos going to live for? It says probably forever, although eventually their hard drives would get wiped by cosmic rays, but that won't happen for thousands of years. There's plenty of time for backups.
Yeah.
And now I wonder about this line, because it could absolutely be true at face value. But Micah's still under the impression that these are AI, using what I would consider conventional, storage components. So maybe Exos are beyond the limitations of the hard drives of the Golden Age, or maybe they still do have the same limitations.
Sure.
But it's just interesting to think about, like, maybe long enough and Exos, just get bits of their memory blasted away.
Sure. Because at the end of the day, it's still it's like we know now that there is some sort of fluid part of an exo, but we don't know how much of that. Essentially, the I don't want to say the same as a Vex. Like, the Vex is not the robot that you kill in front of you; it's the white goo that's in the center, the Radiolarian. And we know that Clovis Bray was experimenting with that, and that's what led to the perfection of the exos. But we don't know how much of that goo is the consciousness of the exo. Like, is that an actual? Is that where the brain synapses are happening in that goo, or is it just like literally like the way Micah thinks of it is just information stored on a hard drive that's just accessed when it needs to be. So that's where I'm curious as, like, no matter how much shielding you can do there, that hard drive is eventually going to break down. Like, that's the nature of a man-made thing. Even a natural thing still eventually breaks down. Like, that's just a part of life.
Although you could argue that we have yet to see the Vex break down. And
shit.
We have literal Vex of thousands and thousands and thousands of years old that are still operational. I guess we couldn't really attest to their mental capacity, but as a hive mind, maybe that's not really a thing. But yeah.
Vex bad, yo.
Well, and by nature of the Exos being made with Vex components, like, I do wonder.
Oh no, Exos bad too.
Exos are unnatural, I think, is what it lends itself to.
I like that.
Which is kind of the whole vibe that Micah and other people have had. Like, they're not right.
Yeah.
So, and letter 4 ends on something of a dark note, or mysterious note. So it's Micah telling of a dream that they have had, and in the dream, they are an exo standing in the middle of a frozen lake, and the sky is completely dark except a single bright moon up in the distance. And Micah is woken from this dream, and he described being awoken from it as, like, his initial thought was that he was angry about it. He was angry that he had to wake up, which was kind of interesting. And maybe that's just the, like, oh, I was just getting to the good part kind of feeling.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe there's more going on there. And he's told by one of his parents, I don't remember which. Let me find the line here. Dreams are just messages from deep inside your mind. If you have not yet gotten the message, it will come to you again. So
Yep.
I believe that was Dad, the
Yep.
psychologist, that told him that. And then that's the end of letter 4, is on this kind of mysterious dream sequence. So now in letter 5, Micah describes that his class went for a field trip, which was really just everyone getting suited up and going out into the tundra. And Micah thought that it was less because they needed a field trip and more because the instructors were just going stir crazy.
Yeah.
Which, you live in a underground facility for months on end. It'll happen.
We can kind of see that with what's going on with the pandemic right now. Like,
just a bit.
Everyone getting locked inside their houses. They go a little nuts.
And heck, we have windows and backyards in some cases.
They have nothing.
They have nothing.
They have metal walls, metal ceilings, metal floors, and that is it.
But so essentially, the instructors of his school, or of Micah's school, send all the kids out into this frozen wasteland, because that seems like a very good idea for small children.
Why not?
And tells all the kids, make sure you buddy up, make sure you're always in sight of, the facility. And so, of course, Micah immediately breaks away from everyone. And
not technically, right?
I mean, in the way they justify it is, well, I can still see the Exo Factory, and that's where I want to go. So, and my buddy is the penguin that I brought with me, so I'm not technically breaking any of the rules.
Yeah. And he's got 2 of his buddies now. He doesn't just have the one now.
Yeah, he's got both
penguins.
penguins.
He's got both of them, yeah.
So needless to say, Micah decides, whatever those other kids are doing, screw it, it's boring. I want to go check out this factory because that's cool and exciting.
Shiny and new.
Right, and Micah's still, has this draw, this curiosity towards the Exos. And so Micah comes to the factory and sees that there are 2 Exos there. And thinking that they're just gonna, finish. I think they were unloading supplies. Thinking that they're just gonna finish their job and be on their way. Just sits down and hides behind a crate. And to Micah's surprise, the Exos stop and start to have a conversation with each other, reminiscing about one of them saying something along the lines of, it's lunchtime, or this was always when I had my lunchtime, and even now I'm not going to work through lunch.
Yeah. Screw the man.
Yeah. Talks about missing the feeling of being hungry.
Yeah.
Which the other remarks to as being hungry for being hungry.
Yeah.
And then they mention, very, very briefly, one of them asks the other, "Did you tell the shrink about the whisper?" And I had a couple questions about this. So I think the implication is the shrink, the psychologist, is Micah's dad in this case.
I believe that to be true.
Now, I've been under the impression that the long, slow whisper, which I assume is what they're referencing here, was the process of an Exo having their memory wiped, having themselves reset and a number attached to the end of their name.
Okay.
However, I don't know how that lines up with something that they would be telling a therapist. And I would have to assume that by nature of being one of the people checking for the humanness of the Exos, that Micah's dad would already be familiar with that process.
Yep.
Which leads me to wonder if maybe the long, slow whisper is something else, and if so, what?
So I have two. I say I have two theories. Of course, I'm going to tangent and have like 30 theories by the time I finish talking. So one, obviously we in Cade's last messages to us, he talks to us. I say he talks to us. He mentions the long, slow whisper, and that's where I always believe that to be the same thing. Like, is that like where your parts of your memory are getting not put back? Because now that we know more about the process of it, even Clovis Bray says, like, we can pick and choose what we want to put back. Like, if there's a memory we don't want in there, we just don't put it in there. So that's kind of like, on the one side, I'm like, oh, cool. So all the shitty things that's happened in life, you just screw those things. Those never happened. Like, that's kind of cool, but at the same time, I'm like, it's a dangerous game to be playing.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Which this actually, as we're talking about this, makes me think that we have had so many Greek references, especially in our last couple episodes, between the Glycon and the Maracena and the Reef and all of that, has had a lot of Greek references. I don't believe it's ever named in a Greek reference, but what this makes me think of is in the underworld, in Greek mythology, specifically within Elysium, within the underworld, there is a river that runs through Elysium that when spirits drink of it, it makes them forget any regretful memories. And that's kind of
Dude,
the same.
That's crazy. That's crazy how much that's lining up. Like, that's super freaking cool.
Could be complete coincidence. Maybe I just have it on my mind because of the Greek references in the previous episodes, but that's what it makes me think of.
I think that's what. Yeah, no, absolutely. So, but as far as the whisper itself, I also am curious if either the early Exos or as Exos kept going, that this whisper is actually them slowly losing their minds.
Yeah.
Which is we know that's a thing in the early days of the Exos because of was it DER? Did I can't remember the actual full thing, but it's disassociation. Like,
yeah, where
their brain can't comprehend them being in a metal body, and so they've literally started ripping themselves apart because they're we as humans know that when I extend my arm, that's as far as it's going to go. But when you're in a metal body, it's hard to. It would be hard to comprehend that, and your mind is telling a servo motor this is as far as it can go, but in reality, that servo motor can go as far as it wants to. Like, there's no limit to it. Like, it could spin circles and do 360s and stuff like that. There's no genuine set end point there. So that's I'm curious if that's part of it. And then the final part of it that I'm curious about, is it the whispers of the dark? Like, is the darkness?
That would make a certain amount of sense, considering every interaction we as Guardians have had with the darkness in the pyramids has always had those background whispers going.
Yes.
And Exos, by nature of being born from a creation of, or a mixture of darkness and Vex.
Yep.
That could certainly be part of it. Maybe they're hearing something due to that darkness connection.
I think so. The more and more I read this and the more I think about it, I think it is that darkness whisper. I think it is that because the Exos inherently are part darkness, they are here. That's the whispers they're hearing. To me, it's either that or the Vex part of them that is trying to still reconnect with the hive mind type thing. Like, are there whispers happening there? And then are the whispers of the darkness and the communications of the Radiolarian, are they conflicting each other? Are there almost like two different thought patterns happening at the same time that is internally trying to override each other, and then the exos, just by nature of being made of those two things, are constantly hearing that.
Yeah, I think it could be any of those, or a combination of those theories. I think there's some very interesting things to keep an eye on there. But okay, so not to tangent too much into that.
Reel us back in.
We'll reel in a bit here. Let me find my spot.
So Micah was in the he saw the two exos. They were talking about, I miss hunger. I'm hungry for hunger. And then that's when they mentioned that shrink and asking, did you tell him about the whisper?
Right. So in hearing the exos, kind of insult his dad. In addition to something about just the way they were talking about food and like missing hunger and whatnot, it makes Micah like sick to his stomach, or sick to their stomach, enough or uncomfortable or just uneasy, enough so that Micah ends up drawing attention to themselves, makes some noise of some sort, and the exos know that somebody's there, and Micah, being a 10-year-old kid, is scared and just bolts as fast as they can. So that's technically the end of letter 5, but letter 6 pretty much picks up right where that left off. So I'm just going to go right into that one.
Yep.
So the exos catch up to Micah. Unfortunately, scared 10-year-old legs still can't run faster than exo-metal legs.
Mechanical awesomeness.
And so this exo, catches up to Micah and grabs him by the collar and lifts him up and just stares at him. And
big flowing blue eyes.
And Micah describes looking into the eyes of this exo as almost like being somewhere so dark you can't see your hands in front of your face, though you can feel they're there.
Yep.
Something about looking into the eyes of the exo is like staring into a pit.
Yeah.
Which again, I think it just references a bit of the fact that they're made of dark, and maybe some of that is coming through in some way.
Yeah.
So the exos have caught Micah, and they're discussing what do they do with this kid, and essentially are trying to figure out whether they want to kill him.
Yeah.
Saying, you think anyone's gonna care if one kid goes missing in the tundra? Like, do we really want to deal with this problem, or do we want to just So
I mean, that's and to me that speaks of like the security of the exo facilities itself, and like even the exos are essentially this top secret thing that, like, oh my god, this thing saw us and we weren't necessarily acting like AIs. So I'm curious if the other exos that are around the facilities that they actually do interact with act like AIs, or if like where his dad had to talk to the AI and he was and Micah wasn't allowed to, if they are trying to keep that hidden still, because they knew that that Papa knew that if Micah started talking, now this thing was like this exo, this metal thing would start talking to Micah in a human term, like in very much as a human itself.
Yeah, I think that's definitely what's going on. I think it's a case of they're still trying to keep the true nature of exos a secret from the colonists that are not directly related to the project.
Yeah.
And so they're discussing whether or not they should murder a 10-year-old child. And I'm not clear on what happens here or what causes this, but essentially the exo that was holding Micah just turns off. Is just all the light goes from their eyes and they collapse into a sparking heap. But we're never given an indication as to why.
So in my head it's like that eagle eye security thing, like watching it goes, ah shit, they found a kid. Shit, like what do we do? And then some guys at the control like hit the off button, hit the off button, hit the off button, hit the claps, and they're like panicking, they're like calling Clovis like, there's a kid. What do we do? And Clovis just like, just turn them off. It's fine.
Yeah.
Because Clovis would be like that cold-hearted. Like Clovis would just be like, we got backups made of them. Just turn them off. Like we'll re-download them later. It's fine.
They'll be version, Bill 2 and John 3, whatever.
I think of it as like Bill and Paul. Like got these cool names like Ariana 3 or Cade 6 or Saint 14. Like no, it's just Bill 1 and Paul 3. Like because Paul's been in a few wrecks. He gets into shit he shouldn't. Bill's the more level-headed guy, and he's like, no, let's think this through. And Paul's just like, nah, fuck it, man. We got these exo bodies. Let's do it.
So, for reasons yet unknown, these exos get turned off, and Micah is freed. And Micah just runs, as anyone would.
Sure.
Just bolts back to his to their classroom. Finds that that Micah's classmates aren't there, the teachers aren't there, but there's all these penguins piled up in the classroom that presumably belong to other students or are being thrown away or something. And I think in a very like physical security blanket kind of way, he digs through, or Micah digs through these penguins, finds the ones that look the most in need of a home, and carries them all back to his home, or to Micah's home, and stashes them under the bed, and then runs all the way back to their classroom, or outside their classroom, where their field trip was, quote unquote, and is back in time for roll call, essentially, and no one ever noticed that Micah was gone, which is kind of depressing,
right?
To be honest,
like even the teacher was like, "Oh, we got 50 kids. It's fine. 1, 2. I can't count to 50. We'll just say they're there." And then 3 hours later, like, it's close enough. Like they're not even. Do they even know they came back with 50? Like that's what I'm curious. Like, screw it. We lost 1 or 2 out in the fight. It's whatever, man.
It'll be fine.
That'll be fine. We'll find them in a couple days. Those Braytech suits, you know them. They're the greatest. Oh wait, maybe they're not. It's whatever. Lazy.
So it's interesting as well that Micah still holds a certain amount of reverence for the Bray family, because all of the additional penguins are named after the Bray family.
Yep.
And Anna, Clovis, Else. I don't know if it's Elizabeth or Elsie. I forget.
Elsie.
What he is. Yep. Elsie. Okay. So he essentially now he has the aeronauts and the Brays as
he names
buddies.
The other 2 aeronauts too. He's got Hardy and is it Kyo or Zio? QIAO. That's a
QIAO. I think that's. I'm not sure. I'm not even going to try because it will offend somebody.
And then of course he's got Clovis, Alton, which I thought that was an interesting one. That even Alton
is an interesting one. It's interesting
very well known.
That Micah even knows about some of these family members to the point of being able to name it, like Elsie. I would expect
Anna, Willa. Yep.
I would expect Elsie to maybe be Elizabeth to everyone outside of her family.
Sure.
But to know her nickname, in addition to Alton and and Willow and some of the more extended family, not just Clovis and his immediate group.
Which
was
to me
interesting.
that speaks to his family. Like that means he had to have worked. His family had to. The fact that they taught that he specifically says Willa, Elsie, Anna. He doesn't say Elizabeth. He doesn't say Anastasia. He doesn't say
Mm-mm.
Wilhelmina. So that means either he is very close to the Clovis family. Like his parents are very much. They've worked with all these people. They've
Yeah.
worked with every single facility, and that Micah has either had personal interactions with all these people to be able to call them by their nickname, and for a 10-year-old kid, like, holy cow, man, like,
I mean, maybe his papa and dad took him to the Bray Tech Christmas party or something.
that's what I'm thinking. That's what
It's
I'm
that
thinking,
kind
right?
of
Like
feel, yeah.
yeah, like that's the only way that he got to meet every single one of them, and now he's got nicknames for every single one of them, and yeah,
Well, and he, despite even being scared by these exos, which are a Braytech thing, he still holds enough respect for the family to name his penguin friends after them.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, so that's the end of letter 6. As we move into letter 7, it has now been 3 months since Micah first arrived on Europa, and things are a little strained in the family life. Says that Dad has not been coming home very often, has been skipping dinners to deal with his patients. Say Micah is often left to make his own breakfast, and sometimes just decides to skip it. Where
yeah,
previously it was a very ritualistic morning routine of
yeah.
he always had a parent making him breakfast, and they always had dinner together, and like those were big deals in their family setting.
Very structured, as so now it's very loose.
Yeah, so clearly there's some marriage to work happening here, or
Yeah.
at least from Micah's point of view.
Which, remember, kids, never bring your work home.
Yeah, I can speak from experience.
Unless you're like Mystic Penguin over here who works from home, then just never leave home. I don't know where to
Never bring work to work.
never bring home to work. I don't know. Never bring work to work. I don't know where to. Yeah, no, I don't know.
We'll leave someone else to ponder that.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, stressed family situation with Micah's fathers, and Micah's having that same dream now, and it's going longer than it did prior to
Every night,
last time
every
he was
single
woken
night.
up. So in this dream again, Micah is always an exo. Always in the middle of a frozen lake with a dark sky of nothing but a single point of light coming from a far-off moon. And in this dream now, Micah has started to jump. And each time gets a little higher, a little higher, a little higher. And to the point where Micah kind of worries in this jumping dream about, oh, I'm gonna crack the ice below me. I'm gonna fall through the ice because I'm gonna hit it so hard. And Micah hears a whisper in this dream. Every time he thinks about, the ice cracking, this whisper says, "Don't worry, I won't let you die before the interesting part." And it eggs him on. It says, go higher, get closer, get closer." And as he's kind of getting the farthest he's been in this recurring dream, he's woken again, this time from his parents fighting in the next room over. And
But right before he wakes up, he does
Yep.
have a realization. He almost leaves the atmosphere, and
That's
he sees
right.
that the moon is. He says the moon was you hovering above Io. So he sees that the moon is the traveler. Like that is the light in all of this darkness. This one tiny
point.
light part of light in the darkness, and like that to me, like that hit me a lot. Like that was like this, like is that what the Traveler is? Is the Traveler truly like the light? The like is the Traveler's power of light so minuscule that the entirety of darkness around it can just snuff it out to just that single point, that single, and we saw that too with Mara when she was stepping off the hull, and it's just darkness everywhere, and this one little pinprick of light, and so it's like all of this to me keeps coming to those same themes over and over again, and then when he talks about that whisper, I that's got to be the darkness.
Yeah, I'm really not sure what to make of this bit.
Yeah.
Because by all accounts, I guess the thing that I'm unclear about is why would Micah be having this dream?
Yeah.
Why would this 10-year-old kid be having a dream about the darkness and the Traveler and being whispered to and all of these things? And I'm going to get a little spinfoily here.
Yeah. Spinfoil away.
I wonder, and I don't necessarily have information to back this up. In fact, if anything, I have information to argue against it more than anything. But I just have this really weird feeling. I feel like Micah is exhibiting things that make me wonder if Micah is perhaps an exo at this point and doesn't know.
I was thinking the same thing, like this whole time, but like
it doesn't line up with other things.
It doesn't, but at the same time, it kind of does.
And he doesn't realize that's being said about the whispers and
Hopefully you picked up on what Mystic said here. Our special guest is very nervous to talk, but not really.
I didn't quite make that out. If you could.
So she said she's curious if it's with how close he is to his parents, like how much of their work and how much of their work, them talking about their work, he's picking up at night in his head. Because you know how like sometimes you fall asleep and you hear stuff. It happens all the time when she's working and she's in the middle of a meeting, and then I'll have a dream about it, and I'm like, in the middle of the dream, I'm like, just solve the damn problem, and then it's like, yeah, that's the So, but I'm curious as to how much of them talking back and forth, this quantum
so
engineer,
he's like subconsciously picking up on their conversations, kind of thing.
I'm curious if that's the thing too. But I still that thought, that idea of what if Micah is an exo and he doesn't even know it.
And really, what
so fucking money, and you don't even know it.
Yes, Benny, that's how that works.
And our other special guest,
yeah,
Tia Italiano. But no. So the thing that really kind of makes that idea stick a little bit for me, that maybe Micah's an exo, is A, the dream, but B, his reaction, or excuse me, their reaction to the discussion the other exos were having. The fact that Micah is described as feeling physically ill, hearing these exos talk about hunger and not needing to eat anymore, it seems like an odd response. I don't know if that's like.
And we know that Katie, like Kate, as far as an exo eating, that is a fact. That has to happen. Even though he's not, like, it doesn't really serve them any purpose, but it helps fight that DER, that the disassociation thing that happens with an exo. So I'm curious
they need to go through those human functions,
Yes.
even if they don't require it on a physical level. Like, they need to do it.
It has to be there as a like a subconscious subroutine for the EXO program to run in the background to keep the mind kind of occupied, so to speak, so that way it doesn't literally rip itself apart.
And what I find interesting is that, and this is in letter 8, which is where we're going, is that in letter 8 it's implied that Micah's dad is the one that came up with the idea of using humanisms to combat DER.
Yes.
So there's not enough to say anything definitively, but I feel like there's a couple threads there that make me wonder, if there's something more going on with this kid.
Yeah.
At this point in time, specifically.
Well, and there's another thing that he says that makes me think that he might actually be one of the ones in the Clovis journals talking with Clovis, because he says, the project is it's too dangerous, it's useless, and that if Clovis wants stable and functioning soldiers, he shouldn't put them through trauma in the first place. And that's the whole thing in the Clovis book that's in game, is like every single one of these things is putting them through some sort of trauma.
Something terrible, yeah.
Something to try to figure out, how do we solve this problem?
Yeah, and this was interesting. So the whole conversations, to back it back up so we're not jumping around more. So the conversation that Micah's dad and Papa are arguing over is, to go back, so if Clovis wants soldiers, he shouldn't put them through trauma. The rebuttal is the point isn't to avoid trauma, but to prepare for it. Exos are being built in case the Traveler turns on humanity, or a bigger or something greater than the Traveler comes to threaten us.
Yes.
In which case, there's a very interesting line said. It says, if you knew humanity could be wiped out in the next 50 years, wouldn't you try anything and everything to save us, to save our child? That implies to me that somebody knew the darkness was coming.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that puts it closer to the end of the timeline of the Golden Age than it does the beginning or the middle or anything, because the fact that he specifically names out 50 years, like,
yeah.
Right. We know Clovis at this time has been working with the darkness, using the darkness. We know he's getting whispers from the darkness. We know the darkness is talking directly to him. We know that the darkness has done everything, like even simulated, or was it the darkness or the Vex that simulated Maya? I don't remember.
It was the Vex, I think, that have simulated Maya Sundaresh at that point.
And so like, the combination of the two, the Vex, that I think that these two things, the darkness and the Vex, are slowly driving Clovis insane. More insane than like just a megalomaniac trying to be the end of the end of the human existence, but to the point of like genuinely like breaking down his psyche on a subconscious subroutine level,
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's even referenced in the the Glassway strike. Elsie says that Clovis opened the Vex portal because the darkness told him to.
Yeah.
So it's able to, order him to do things to a certain degree.
Yeah.
I'm sure it does it in a more clever manner than, hey, go do this.
Hey, open that door.
Makes it think it's his idea, or makes it think that's where the next breakthrough is, kind of thing.
Either that, or I think it was like the darkness is the guy in the van, the windows. I got candy on the other side of the door. You want to open this door? Clovis is like, candy. I do love me some good candy. Like,
The only question I have, so absolutely Clovis has been in contact with the darkness, has been corrupted by the darkness for all accounts and purposes. Why
Yeah.
would it be forewarning him that it's on its way?
yeah.
To the point, and to the point that it's helping him create soldiers specifically to fight it, whether
Holy
or
shit.
not the darkness thinks that's, a futile effort or not. Like, why even bother? Why even give them the opportunity to develop something to fight back?
I've never thought of it from that perspective. That's holy shit.
So I don't know. I don't know if we can say, yeah, the darkness is just it gave the same message to Clovis it did to us. We are coming. We are your salvation.
Yeah.
And if Clovis took that as a threat,
And we know that the darkness plays by sword logic, so it always loses the chess game with the gardener. And so it's trying to create rules within this game. Oh man, you might be onto something here, man.
so we could argue that maybe if we follow that thread of thought, perhaps the creation of the Exos was a goal of the darkness in some way.
Yeah.
I don't know what the end result they're looking for was there.
Right. We still don't even know what the hell the darkness's ultimate goal is. Like we know it wants to win the chess game, because if you lose a billion matches against your opponent and you're just like, well, this freaking blows. I mean, we can see that in Crucible. If we go on a losing streak of 10, we're like, screw this shit, I'm out.
Yeah.
Hell, if we go on a losing streak of 5, we're like, this is dumb. And this guy's been losing chess. I say this entity has been losing this chess game for all of eternity, essentially, and because he only knows his only base.
He's been losing because the other guy's making up rules. Like,
Exactly.
This is really what it is.
So he's trying to create his own set of sub rules to help out his overarching rules. So maybe he did. Maybe I keep saying him. Maybe the darkness as an entity did want to create Exos. Maybe it did want something that could live forever, that could be something that's part darkness, and then use that as whatever. Like, we don't know. Like, that's the why. Why?
So this is an interesting idea that I'm thinking about as we're talking about this. Are the only non-guardians that can wield stasis Exos? Because
one more time.
Are the only non-guardians that can wield stasis Exos? Because they're
Because the drift.
well, and I guess the Awoken too. I'm trying to think, because they have a direct connection to darkness. The Exos do by nature of how they're built.
Born of dark and light. Yep.
Yeah, Awoken would as well, I suppose, because of how they came to be.
Yeah.
Eris Morn, I consider something of a she's like connected herself to the darkness. She used to be a guardian, but she also has hive bits in her, so
Right.
Well,
and who knows if it's part Ahamkara that's helping her
true.
wield the darkness. Like we don't know if the Ahamkara themselves prefer light or dark or one thing or another. We just know that they feed off of desire. So if someone's desire is to wield darkness, okay, there you go, boom. It may kill you and it may eat your soul, but whatever, who cares, right? Like, you got your wish.
So not to tangent again inside of a tangent.
If you tangent enough, you form a circle.
You just come back around.
This leads back to the whole idea that the traveler's a circle, so we're just circling back around eventually.
I think the Ahamkara are likely lean more towards the light, because they are paracausal beings. They create out of nothing.
Sure.
Which is inherently like a nature of light.
Right.
I don't know that they align themselves with one or the other, but I feel like they probably draw power from light versus dark.
Sure.
But so to complete this circle,
Yes.
of tangent,
Circle all the way back around.
circle all the way back around. Needless to say, they had an inkling something was coming in the next 50 years. It was big.
Yep.
It was bad. They needed an army to fight against it, and the Traveler might not be enough. And so from Micah's dad's point of view, Micah's papa's point of view in this
Yep.
case, like they need to do anything and everything right now because otherwise it's the end of us all. And Micah's dad doesn't disagree per se, but essentially says like living in the here and now is better than living in the Armageddon that is yet to come.
Yep.
And
this is where Papa reaffirms that the humanism's idea is the solution.
Yeah, no,
to the DER.
Yeah, he says the DER stuff is hard, but the humanisms you suggested are the key. I'm sure of it, and I think that is like he is the psychologist.
Absolutely.
That came up with the idea of make exos more human, so that way they don't freak out and kill themselves.
Yep.
So, all that being said, Micah's dad says, "I'm sorry, we can't do this anymore. I'm taking Micah and I'm leaving on the next colony ship.
Yeah.
I hope you come with us." Essentially, is the message delivered. And really, that discussion is all of letter 8. We now got into letter 9, which is the last letter in the series, although not the last bit of info to talk about.
Or the last letter of the alphabet.
Or the last letter of the alphabet.
God dang it. Okay, letter 9.
Letter 9. Micah wakes up to what is usually a somewhat normal routine, but is now very odd by the fact that it hasn't happened in quite some time. Micah's papa has made breakfast and is walking him to school, and the entire time that he's doing it, he's asking him things like, how do you like it here? I'm sorry for having to work so much. Being very apologetic, very empathetic to Micah, which is just kind of raising red flags for Micah as like, what's going on? It's the typical parents trying to butter you up for bad news kind of vibe is what I felt from it. And he essentially tells him, Dad has been working really hard and has been having to sleep at the Braytech facility. He's not going to be home for a little while. Says he's really sorry that he has to work so much. And Micah pretty much internally is like that's a dead lie.
Yeah.
He knows something isn't right here, and is confirmed when he has not heard or seen his dad in a week straight.
Yeah.
Which is very, very unheard of. His dad was the one that was trying to bring their family back to what they used to be prior to being a part of this project, and now for him to suddenly just disappear without any word because of work, quote unquote, just doesn't line up for Micah. And so
as we've discussed before,
he thinks something's
is a
fishy
very
going on.
smart kid. Like he as far as like a 10-year-old goes, he picks up on a lot more of this stuff than what I say the average 10-year-old would pick up on.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think so. But during this week that his dad has been away, Micah has finished, quote unquote, this recurring dream. He's reached the end, and it did not recur again after experiencing it. And in the end of his dream, so again. He is always an exo standing in the middle of a frozen lake with a dark sky with nothing but a single point of light, which we learned is the Traveler. And in normal dream logic fashion, Micah is jumping up and down, and each time he gets higher, or each time they get higher, till eventually breaking through the atmosphere of Europa, or stratosphere of Europa.
Because remember, Europa has no anything.
Europa has no anything. And is reaching for the Traveler now, as his jump is pushing him towards Io, towards the Traveler, and the whispers that he was hearing previously in the dream ask, "Are you sure you know what you think you know?" And the dream ends without Micah actually ever reaching the Traveler.
Which that to me, that's borderline Micah's an exo.
It's it certainly seems fishy. Yeah.
Something like that. Like, to me, that's like, okay, what do you mean by you think you know what you think? Like, what the hell?
Especially if we consider, whether it is the long slow whisper or not, we know for a fact Clovis has the ability to remove and pick and choose memories.
Yeah.
Maybe Micah was never that smart of a 10-year-old. Maybe Micah just thought they were 10 and has really been through the gambit a couple hundred times, But it doesn't, I don't know. It doesn't quite line up.
There's like it's almost like a wavy line next to a straight line. It's like every once in a while
so
it
close,
lines up and you're like, oh, well, that's it. And then it just moves away from it. It's like, oh, no. We're just reading too much into this. But I don't know, man. This is... I don't know.
So, Micah has had this dream, has finished it, but doesn't really understand what it means and hasn't had it again. And Papa comes to Micah and says, "Hey, Dad's going to be home soon. We're going to all go out like we used to and have a big family outing. It'll be a grand old time." And Micah again is like, "Bullshit, Mater."
Yeah.
Yeah. To the point where Micah has decided, he goes, I'm not waiting anymore. I'm not going to listen to being lied to anymore. I'm gonna pack myself up in my Braytech snow jacket, and I'm gonna grab my penguins, and I'm gonna go outside to the supply ship that I know takes me off of this damned place, and I'm gonna search for my dad at the same time. And so he sneaks out in the middle of the night and leaves this last letter as a goodbye to the Traveler and to his papa, who's still asleep at home. And that is the last we hear of Micah the child.
Yeah. However,
Micah does resurface a little later in a little different place. So, this comes from the Legacy Oath Greaves from DSC.
Yep.
Telling the story of the Exo Micah 10.
When I saw that was like, that's like that line, like smashing through the other line and going, nope, that's the reason why he thinks he's 10 is because he is Micah 10.
Yep. So,
and that's
10 years old,
like,
kinda.
That's like, kinda, 10 resets old.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my god, like, mind exploding in 1,000 different ways, like, oh my god, this is everything.
So, and the Exo Micah 10 actually has a few achievements of note that are separate from Europa in particular. but I think are still kind of fun, so we might as well mention them here. So the thing that really cements...
I can't remember real quick, because I want to find this one too. Do you remember what specific armor it's on?
Well, what I'm looking at is Legacy's Oath Greaves right now,
Okay.
which talks about Micah 10 in Old Russia.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Micah 10 is in Old Russia and is helping ghosts find their guardians, essentially. And it's implied that it's not Dark Age. This is time, the Age of the City, but it's very early Age of the City. And as if we needed any more evidence to imply that these two Micahs are the same people, it states that Micah has her, so we finally have a gender now. Has her own sights set firmly on the past, on the deep stone crypt. She once thought it buried in Siberia, but now thinks is in a much farther, lonelier place, somewhere very cold. That she knows for certain. She dreams of the battleground and the Black Tower that every Exo dreams of.
Yep.
But every 50th dream, she also has the feeling of a paternal hand placed on her shoulder and hears the words, "You just need to get acclimated. It's much colder here than Mars." Implying when they first left from Mars to go to Europa.
Yep.
And every 100th dream, she sees a man sitting in a chair with a notepad saying, "Dreams are just messages from deep inside your mind." Her psychologist father explaining dreams initially to her. She curses whoever made her. So it's unclear at this point to me if Micah 10 is a guardian or just a very, very old Exo.
Yeah.
It doesn't clarify until later. She absolutely does become a guardian. But at this point, I think it might just be a super old Exo that
I think so too.
has lived through everything,
Because
but
further in that one,
forgotten
it
most.
says in humans, body sensation is a form of communication, the connection between the mental and physical. But in exos, it's all a lie: cold, heat, hunger, exhaustion, pain. Those signals aren't connected to real lack or breakage. For the most part, her body is impervious. On the rare occasion she does break, she won't know unless someone else tells her.
Yeah, so indicating she can be injured and needs to repair or heal, but needs someone else to indicate that injury is there. So yeah, I think at this point, not a guardian, just a very old Exo. Now this ties in. It gives us a little bit of a timeline to reference where Micah 10 is currently. And it also ties her into the story of our Vanguard. So this is in the Protector of Ghosts Ghost Stories. Micah 10 writes a letter to Tallulah Fairwind, who is the, I believe, first Hunter Vanguard of the city, and tells Fairwind that she has helped another ghost find their partner, and is a hunter by the name of Andrel Brask. Andrel Brask being the, I think, second Hunter Vanguard, but definitely the predecessor to Cade 6 as the Hunter Vanguard. And it's also implied that Micah herself is now a hunter and has a ghost of her own, because she says in the letter, "I'm now down to only one ghost other than my own." And signs the letter as "Your faithful den mother of ghosts." So it looks like even after her presumed resurrection as a guardian, she has taken on the mission, the same mission she had before, of offering protection to guardianless ghosts as they scan and try to find their guardian. And is known for having kind of a cloud of ghosts around her or a school of ghosts around her, and it seems like they finally dwindled to the last one that she's helping.
Yep.
So the other exploits of Micah the Hunter at this point. Micah goes on, presumably after helping that last ghost, and forms the band of hunters called the Coyotes. The Coyotes more or less still do the same job. They go around and find newly resurrected guardians and try to either incorporate them into their own band of hunters or offer them safety to go elsewhere. The city, presumably. And there's a little interesting tidbits that I picked up on in these. This is the sixth coyote in the bandwagon lore tabs that Micah is mentioned in.
Yep.
Micah says to one of her members of the Coyotes that they have some new guardians, and new guardians kind of ponder, like, how do people pick their names? Like, how do people know what to call each other? And Micah says that Exo Guardians, always are resurrected with memory of what their name was, but nothing else.
That's
so Micah knows that she is Micah.
Yep.
Cade knew that he was Cade. Presumably Saint knew that he was Saint, although it is possible that they know their true names but chose to not use it. But yeah, Exo Guardians always remember their name but nothing else. Human and Awoken get nothing and have to pick a new one.
So to me, that's again comes down to the two-part nature of the Exo, being part darkness, part Vex. I'm curious if the name is a subroutine buried deep within the Radiolarian, that when they do get rezzed as a guardian, that is the one thing that can activate. That's it's on such a simple, either a simple subroutine or it's on like every subroutine. That is the one thing that comes through with the resurrection.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a property of the darkness, because if it was a property of the darkness, then all Awoken would remember their name.
The big question mark for me is on the Legacy Oath Greaves, that lore card, is Micah a guardian at that point or not?
I would like to think that she is.
So if she is, that brings about another question, because she is technically not only remembering her name, but she is dreaming and remembering her parents. And so if she is a guardian at that point,
possibly.
either the Vex are offering, the Vex part of an Exo is offering access to more memories and such there.
And the fact that it happens on exact dream cycles, that to me leads to a mechanical thought. That leads to me to a mathematical portion, which to me leads to the Radiolarian and the Vex.
That I think you've got something there. I didn't even connect the dots that it was on a numerical value.
And 100th.
Very
it's
exact
every 50th and
value.
every 100th, and that's a very exact. Now, granted, with the Vex, we don't maybe they run at 50 hertz. So that to them that's the what I mean. Like that could be like there's like we always think of things in 60 hertz because we as humans, that's what we utilize as our power source in our houses. But like when I was in Iraq, our generators would fluctuate between 50 and 60 hertz, and then like the radars that I worked on, they were 400 hertz. So you can still have any AC signal, or any signal. I don't know. I mean, technically a signal is going to be it. Anyway, can run at any frequency you want it to, right? So maybe that's just the Vex's inherent frequency is 50 hertz.
Yeah, or 50 dream cycles, however that equates.
Shit. Oh shit! I didn't even think of it that way. I'm still trying to equate this to like what a human would, but they're not even. Holy shit!
we don't know how the Vex operate. You know what their
Mind-broken.
manner of measurement would be.
Mind broken. Boom. Scatter the pieces to the wind.
So yeah, but that's the story thus far of, because by all accounts Micah is potentially still out there somewhere running
Right.
with the band of coyotes.
Because the coyotes are the ones that were in. Is it Palamine? Or am I thinking differently?
So, are you thinking of Jaren Ward?
That's what I, when I think of coyote,
Okay.
that's what I start thinking of. And for some reason I remember the coyotes being mentioned there, but that could be something just my brain associating two things that have nothing to do with each other. Like, because one started with the letter C and the other one ended with the letter E, and so now they're both coyotes. You know, like that. That could just be my brain being my brain. I don't know. I
don't see anything. I just did a quick search in Ishtar Collective. I don't see anything in particular referencing the coyotes to. It was like Palamine or something like that.
Yeah.
The previous home of Jaren Ward.
Yeah.
I'm only seeing it in reference to the
band of
coyotes themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, and yeah, there's so many, like, it's hard to tell if Micah that entire time was an exo. Like, there's so many little things, and I'm curious. I'm truly curious if, I mean, because, like, the fact that, like, none of the other kids, she doesn't really interact with any other kids. There's so many little subtle things there that lead me personally to believe that entire time she is the first working exo, and I obviously the exos worked for a while, and then they started developing DER and having issues, but then when Micah's dad comes up with the idea of maybe we need to put the humanness back in them. We've taken so much humanness out of them that they don't know how to be humans without destroying themselves. And so I'm curious if either, because that was the last letter, and at the beginning of that last letter, Micah does mention that this is my last letter that I'll be sending you. I don't know if I don't know how I'll ever get these letters to you, you being the traveler, obviously. And so I don't even know if these letters will even be sent. And so I'm assuming, again, this is kind of drawing on different topics and ideas and thoughts. I'm assuming that we as Guardians are finding these letters, like, tucked inside the little penguins.
Yeah, that was my assumption.
And that means that each one of those penguins are one of Micah's penguins, because there are 9 of them, and you go collect 9 of them.
Yeah, that was how I took it as well. And those penguins are scattered throughout Europa.
All over Europa. Over Europa.
Which might be an indication of her looking for her dad at the time.
So that's the portion of the story that we don't know. We don't know if she went looking for her dad, if maybe she died,
right,
and was just brought back as an exo. Like, maybe her dad just so happened to have her consciousness stored somewhere. We've seen parts of the inside of the Brave facility. We know that there are huge amounts of data banks in there. Like, especially like when we go fight the Techno Rat.
Yes.
Techno Rat. I keep calling it
Technocrat.
Yeah. It's the Techno Rat now. I just think of it as like this little disco rat. He's just like, wicked what? Like, yeah, no. He's got his little turntables in front of him, and he's just, yeah, no.
That used to be a boss fight, man.
Oh, God. God damn it. and you're locked to using the Rat King. Like, that's the only gun you can use the entire time.
No. There's no guns. It's emotes only. Dance off.
Oh God. Depending on the emote, does more damage? No.
Yep. Bungie, hire us.
Damn it. God damn. We can do something other than balls and triangles, I swear.
But yeah, no.
I'll try to stop there.
Yeah.
Now I'm just imagining this entire techno-rat
her
dance party thing happening.
Yeah. Her consciousness is potentially stored in Clovis somewhere.
Right. Like, so we don't know if Clovis Bray, because obviously her dads are very, very much in that high up hierarchy
absolutely.
of Clovis Bray itself. So there's you know, if she had gone out looking for Dad, and then, you know, Papa panics and says, "Shit, where's Micah?" Goes out looking for him. Maybe Papa passes away as well, and Dad finds him and is like, "Well, shit. The only way I know how to save them is to bring them back as Exos." Because we don't even know we don't know who Papa is. Like, we don't have names for Papa and Dad.
We don't have names for anybody.
We don't know if they're Exos. Because that's the other thing too. Do we even know that they're Exos? Are they Exos at that point in time right there? Are they human?
I mean, the one
get
thing
any of that information.
The one thing we haven't seen is we've never seen an Exo wearing a human analog, a human skin. Presumably, if they are an Exo, they look like an Exo as we know it, just because we've never seen record of anything different.
Yep.
Part of me wonders if perhaps these letters weren't written by 10-year-old Micah. Perhaps these letters were written by Micah 10, reliving or remembering the previous life. Because that could kind of explain some of it. You know, the events that they talk about that happened to child Micah did happen, but some of the weirdness is being implied because it's being written by her in Exo form, reliving human memories.
Yeah.
I don't know what would have happened to lead up to that. You know, that event.
That's the ultimate question there. That's the what the hell? Like, we genuinely have no idea what. After that last letter, the next time we meet her, she is either an Exo with her little own groupies of ghosts, and she's just like, "Hey, I'm gonna help you little machines find little friends," and she's having these dreams of her family, of her prior life. And she is referring to herself as Micah 10, so that is obviously she's clearly gone through at least 9 resets to get to this point. And so then 9 resets, 9 letters. Is each one of these letters another reset?
That's a good point too.
Like, there's so many little questions here that, like, if you just kind of like tug on a string, you start unraveling, and now you're left with 60 strings, and you're like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing anymore. I'm just tugging on strings. Like, there's so many questions there that are not answered, that are just such a mystery. And I do truly hope that Micah 10 is out there somewhere, and that we do run into her.
I think that would be really cool, especially as, you know, the discoverer of the of Andrel Brask as the Hunter Vanguard, and
absolutely,
and, you know, literally being the origin of his whole story, and by conjunction, Cades, and
she's the beginning of so many Guardian stories because of her little group of ghosts. That's just So much for a light topic, right?
I mean, it kind of was. It wasn't, you know, alternate universes and things. Yeah. So, but I do think that's maybe a good spot to end.
Absolutely. Yep. That's our that's our show tonight. That's our episode. Micah and her penguins. Yeah. That's so many. I have to laugh because the more stories we do like this, the more myths we come up and break and prove wrong, and just by collecting data and stuff like that, we end up with even more questions and more what the hell than we do answers.
I say this every time, but again, I am constantly amazed at how intertwined everything is. So when I was reading through these originally, it was okay. It's the Penguin stories. I read them as I got
Yeah.
them during the week, and I was like, oh, this is kind of a cute turned dark story of this little kid,
Yeah.
in this environment, and then rereading them again, going, there's something more here, and then
Mm-hmm.
typing. Really, the revelation was typing in the name Micah on Ishtar Collective, and seeing not just the the Penguin books show up, and go, wait a minute,
Wait a second. Hold on a sec.
and then to click into the Legacy Oath lore and see, oh no, like she was this whole figure after all of these events, and then to click into the ghost stories and find, oh, not only was she this figure, like she is single-handedly responsible for protecting ghosts,
she's like the mother
to
of
bring
guardians.
us, to bring us some of the best, like these old city age guardians.
Yeah.
And the fact that ties into this little kid in Europa, it's just like,
It's crazy. It's crazy.
it's so good.
It's awesome. It's so awesome. I absolutely love it. But yeah, I definitely think that's a good spot to end. So obviously, I'd like to thank Mystic Penguin for joining us. She has since headed off to bed, as did Alpha earlier. Yeah, everyone that tuned in, I know Seraph was in here for a bit. I don't know if he's still in here. There he is. Taliano, Scotty, obviously our producer Mark. Keiston, I know you're floating around here somewhere. And then, of course, my co-host, Mythborn, and myself, Zorialis. Hope to see y'all next week for more myths and stories.
And the new season.
Thank you, myself. I'd like to thank myself for tuning in.